What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Daddygate Podcast. I am your host, Mr. Truthy Poo Poo, alongside
Mr. Chancy Poo. How's it going?
Exquisite, my friend. We are ready for another somewhat delectable and delicious Daddygate episode. Are you ready?
I'm definitely ready, man. I mean, this podcast doesn't exist, apparently, so I think we're good to go as hard as we want. So let's get into it.
Yeah, man. What a wild week up and down the whole Daddygate scale.
It has been. It's been a wild couple of weeks, hasn't it? But yeah, this recent couple of events here, all Sean Attwood related, all brought on himself as usual.
I think it's just a cry for attention. You look at the numbers. Mm-hmm. And by the way, excellent video that you put out yesterday. If you guys haven't seen it, go to Chancer's video and check it out. In my opinion, the best Attwood breakdown video he's ever done, which is saying a lot because you've made a lot of great videos, but you broke it down, and I can just picture Sean watching that video and just being pissed off, man. He's calling for evidence. You're hitting him with evidence. He's gaslighting up and down, and the title to the video you made was completely appropriate. So everyone, if you haven't seen it, check it out.
Cheers, man. Yeah, it was a fun video to make. I had a little bit of a deadline. All these things are so time sensitive, you know. You've got to try and get them out at the time, and it had to kind of make sense because, well, as you know, James English obviously called out Sean Attwood, although it wasn't really a call out. It was more of a response to what I consider to be repeated, unprovoked attempts at inflaming tensions between James English and Sean Attwood by Sean himself, just in the most recent couple of weeks, you know.
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand why Sean was just suddenly starting to go after James English, and I still don't. He obviously got a sort of a level of confidence about him that he felt it was time to start going after James English. James then put out a video on his own channel calling out Sean Attwood, and he did give me a shout out in that, which was very nice. It was good to see. Sean Attwood said, "The trolls will be laughing their asses off at this," and I can confirm, if I am one of those trolls, that I certainly was laughing my ass off. So Mr. Attwood certainly had that correct. But it wasn't really a call out by James English. It was more of James English saying, in my opinion anyway, you know, Sean, if you're going to come at me with this bullshit, then let's put your shit out for everyone to see on my main channel. And it's the first time somebody with a very large platform has actually called out Sean Attwood in relation to a lot of these issues. But again, Attwood fired back as if he wasn't expecting James English to actually, you know, respond to his repeated provocations over the last few days. Attwood actually fired back to James English's call-out video, and as you would expect, it was just absolutely full of total and utter gaslighting, which is the only appropriate word. He was sitting there and saying things like, "My entire backstory checks out, all my paperwork is there, it's legit, it's been checked out by Vice, it's been checked out by NBC News or whoever, you know, they wouldn't feature me if my backstory was fake." And it's like, which part of James English's video said your backstory was fake, you know?
I think we skipped ahead a little bit. Let's go back to the whole Decca interview.
Oh, yeah,
that's what kind of instigated this whole thing and brought us. So for those that missed it, you know, kind of give them a little chronological. So yeah, Decca Heggie had a podcast. He had Darren Gee, Sean Attwood on there. And
quite a big podcast for Decca's channel as well.
They kept being amazed at 3,500 people live in the live chat. And if you have someone with 700,000 subs, you got another person like Darren Gee who can, if he had a YouTube channel, could probably have 50, 60,000 subs of his own. Then you have Decca with 10. You're talking about almost 800,000 subs. 3,500 in the live chat is not very many.
Well, they were calling it record breaking, which is definitely an exaggeration.
They were what?
They were calling it record breaking. They said this has got to be a new record. This has to be a new record.
They were essentially talking smack about James making all these crazy and slanderous claims, and James ended up responding to him a couple days later. He did the podcast on his channel by himself, No fancy microphones or studio, nothing. He just laid it out there. And when we were getting ready to check out the stuff, you were like, oh shit, look how many people was in the live chat. I go, watch, bro. It's going to be double what they had at Decca. And it ended up being pretty much, it didn't surprise
James
me.
English had definitely
had 6,000.
6,000.
Yeah, he hit the 6,000.
6,000 after Attwood was talking about it being record breaking on Decca Heggie's channel, and to make it quite clear to Mr. Attwood, and he's delusional if he thinks any different than this, it wasn't him that brought those numbers in on Decca's channel. It was Darren Gee that brought those numbers in, and specifically because Darren Gee had been calling out Sean Attwood.
And then we have the Chancer.
Yes, and myself. But I mean, Darren Gee calls out anyone, even in that specific podcast. Darren Gee says, if you're going to lie about me, I'm going to lie about you, which I thought was just absolutely wiped out everything else he said. I was like, well, there you go. You know what I mean? You can't trust anything you say. And to actually humbly apologize to Sean Attwood, whose first example of gaslighting was against Darren Gee in that podcast, because Darren Gee was not really believing Sean Attwood, and Sean Attwood was insisting that certain things he'd done were completely unintentional towards Darren Gee, which we know is utterly false. Sean Attwood brought up allegations about Darren Gee, which I'm not going to repeat here, on his interview with Sonia Poulton. Remember back then he mentioned allegations that were going around, unfounded, which I believe to be false allegations about Darren Gee. He brought them up out of nowhere for no reason. Sean Attwood's had it in for Darren Gee for a long time, and I don't know why. He also wore an anti-knife crime t-shirt on an apology or a response video to Darren Gee the other day. I don't know if you saw that, where Sean Attwood did my response to Darren Gee. It was like a 2-minute video, and he was wearing a knife crime t-shirt that had a different logo on it. It wasn't Darren Gee's knife crime t-shirt or knife crime logo. And the first thing I thought when I saw that is, why is Sean Attwood wearing a different sort of knife crime t-shirt when he's speaking to Darren Gee? It's such a deliberate attempt to try and either get in Darren Gee's good books in a really bad way, or he's actually trying to fuck with Darren Gee, which Darren Gee picked up on and said, why did you wear that t-shirt? And Sean Attwood was like, oh, it was totally unintentional, Darren.
Oh, God.
He just happens to be wearing that. And then Darren Gee bought it, and I just thought, you're gaslighting Darren Gee there. And I was going to mention that in my video, but I thought better of it, But, you're gaslighting Darren Gee right there to his face, and in my opinion, you could see Darren Gee sort of struggling with his thoughts on the matter. You could see that he didn't quite believe Attwood, but for whatever
the whole
reason,
thing was a shit show, man. One second they're cool, I'm sorry for this, and then Darren Gee, I'm sorry for that, and then but you're gay, and then it's back and forth, and then they start being cool again, and then attacking each other. Choose a life, not a knife. While he's talking shit.
Sean's never attacked Darren. All Sean has ever done is apologise to Darren Gee, despite the fact he's on paper done nothing wrong to Darren Gee.
Well, he held on to his book is the problem.
He did hold on to his book, and he did other things as well, which Darren knows about. On paper, he's kept his hands clean.
Yeah, they both don't have their hands clean. There's plenty of blame to go on both sides, but at the end of the day, the reason that little podcast got any views was because of Darren Gee. Let's not make any mistake about that. You can feel how you want about the man, one way or the other, it doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is the views came in because of Darren Gee. No other reason. I mean, Sean had made
100%.
Sean had made the rounds on other shows, and he was struggling to get 100 views in the live chat, 150. He was on the Chris Thrall, dude with 60,000 subs. That's where he was talking shit to me while, talking to Chris. And they managed, 150 on the live chat and 60,000 subs and allegedly 680 with Sean. I mean, you just see the pattern over and over again. And the reason they got those quote-unquote record-breaking numbers is because of Darren Gee at the end of the day.
The views that Sean had on other platforms recently were he was lucky to be hitting 3,000 on podcasts with these other people. 3,000 views basically is what Sean Attwood will attract to a channel. No more or less than what they normally get on one of their videos. Whereas Darren Gee always brings in the big numbers when he's on a podcast. It's well known, and that is what they did. But they exploited the fact that so many people had tuned in to go after James English, who'd been completely silent for, we must be talking almost a year now. James English had been absolutely silent on Sean Attwood. And for some reason, the last few weeks, it was before the Decca Heggie podcast as well. It wasn't just that, but it was actually before that. Sean kept talking about the Scottish podcaster, which is not me. Some people think he's referring to me. He actually calls me the Scottish troll. So he's got a thing about talking about people without having the balls to say who he's talking about.
I call you the Scottish kitty cat.
Yes, I've heard worse.
Yeah. No, it's just a cry for attention. Like, we started the show today. Sean's numbers are not relevant. They're in the tank. And what better way than to drum up some attention by bringing in James, reading text messages from James that are months old.
What a move.
And then when called out on
messages that someone sent.
Yeah, and then when called out on it, when did you get these text messages? He tried to dodge the question. And I will give Decca credit for that, for bringing up the question again. Well, wait a minute. When did he send? And then he was forced to answer that those text messages came way back in December or something like that.
They had also, if you notice, they'd actually stopped talking about James English as well. They said, let's move on to something more positive now. And they'd stopped talking about James English, but Attwood pulled it back to James English repeatedly. And then just out of nowhere started reading out his text messages towards the end of the podcast. It was irrelevant. And that's why Darren Gee and Decca Heggie were confused, because they were like, oh, did these just come through just now, these messages, or what? Why are you mentioning them otherwise? We were talking about James English earlier. Why have you just brought it back up again? But all Sean succeeded in doing, in having this sort of little battle, which he hashtags as podcast wars, which is just so lame, like he's the one you don't put podcast wars in your own title. It's, that's for other people to do when they're talking about what's going on. You don't say, I'm now part of the podcast wars. That is just pathetic. Just an absolute desperate cry for help.
The attention for that cry for attention went even a few days before then. I can't remember exactly the timeline, but a week, where he was allegedly challenging him, to a boxing match.
Pathetic. Clout chasing. He saw James English was succeeding in a boxing in boxing training, and that there was a bit of buzz about James English having a fight, and Sean Attwood decided to try and get a slice of it, which is just ridiculous. And he accuses this guy of defaming him, and yet he's quite happy to say, oh, I'm going to have a boxing match with him, and then we'll just shake hands afterwards. Not a good idea if you're going to try and sue someone for defamation.
But it's the same. Say, oh, well, it's the same characteristic, man, that we've been seeing with all these individuals, where it's all right for them to talk smack, but as soon as the other side defends themselves, oh, now you're cyberbullying me, and it's the same thing. That's what he's doing. He's trying to have fun. I challenge him to a boxing match. By the way, I've got a court proceedings, against you. This is supposed to be the Sean, the original gangster,
who says he hates snitches. He supports his critics being reported to the police, and he's snitching on James English for something that Darren Gee said. It was
Sean, the hardcore guy that teams up with campaigners. Real hardcore, man. Yeah, it's all a joke. But you go back to James English, where he did his own show, like we were saying, on his own. He was able to get 6,000 numbers. I'm not trying to make a big deal of the numbers, but I think it's relevant in this case. For example, I was looking at James English's podcast, solo podcast. In 3 days, already 240,000 essentially views. Mm-hmm. So the view count of his sub count, he's already hit that. And why am I bringing that up? We've been pointing out that Sean's activity, his numbers, all that stuff just don't add up with his allegedly 700,000 subscriber base. You mentioned this on your video yesterday, but the Social Blade claim of the 10,000 subs loss, that was awesome. I spoke with one of the callers last night, so if you guys want to check out my live streams. I'm still been doing them. I haven't gone anywhere. They're on Odysee. But one of the callers that called in, she was the one that put the information. So shout out to the camera lady. That's the name she goes by. She's the one that put the Social Blade stats where what was the exact claim that he had lost 10,000?
He said he lost 10,000 subs in the snap of a finger.
Yeah.
He said just like that. He said I was losing 100 subs an hour. But he can't know that. All that he could, based on the Social Blade stats, all that Sean Attwood could have seen was that his subscriber increase had slowed down. Not that he lost any subs. There was no loss of subs. The graph never went into the negative. It goes below the line if you lose subs. So there was no point where Attwood lost any subs. So it's just bullshit. And as you said, it's completely irrelevant to talk about the numbers because Attwood himself has marked the title as Podcast Wars. He invites comparison with James English. He says the Scottish podcaster hashtag Podcast Wars. That invites comparison. James English has got 280,000 subscribers in 3 years. Sean Attwood has got 700, almost 700,000, let's say for the sake of argument, in 13 years.
Yeah, 288 for James as of right now. And then that one video, 237k views. But yeah, go on.
Attwood's video responding to James got 84,000 views at the last count.
That's what I'm saying, dude.
Which is absolute, which just proves when you're going to hashtag Podcast Wars, don't invite comparison with somebody who clearly is bigger than you, because Attwood keeps on mocking James English, saying, "Oh, he's the biggest podcaster in the universe," as if James English is full of shit. But James English is certainly bigger than Sean Attwood. He's certainly, even though he's got less subscribers, that literally means nothing. There's channels out there with 2 million subscribers that hit 130 views on a video. Everyone knows about them. They've clearly just bought subscribers over time. Whether Sean Attwood has done that is a different story, but certainly he's got 400,000 more subscribers than James English.
He's got James English is a third the size of Sean's channel. Let's look at it that way, a third the size, and yet he continually puts up numbers far greater than anything he puts out.
Much bigger than Sean Attwood's. Like many times, his normal episodes take many times the views that Sean Attwood's normal episodes take. Although after doing all this shit, of course, Sean Attwood, his videos have had more views than normal because people are tuning in to see if he mentions, any of this stuff again. So he's getting all his views on his alleged wild woman videos. He's getting like 5,000-6,000 views. He never used to get that on a video. He used to get about 2,000 views, up to 10,000, and up to possibly 20,000 on a very good video, which is really bad because James English is constantly hitting 60, 70, 80 plus, and has several videos with over 1 million in his 3 years on YouTube. So no wonder Sean Attwood's got the green eyes for him. Yeah,
and to me, it's no question why Sean has been having his eyes set, bringing him up for no relevant reason, bringing up old shit, bringing up old text. He's just crying for attention,
inflammatory bullshit.
Yeah, it's no different than the stuff we've gone on, and we don't have to get into that, but it's the same thing. These people are just hungry for attention, so they're just gonna sling all this crap at you to try to get some attention.
And then play the victim.
Yep. Exactly, they'll talk all this smack. As soon as you defend yourself, you hit back. Oh, you're cyberbullying me now. Get the hell out of here. It's old and tired, and I want to take a page from James in that regard, where let's just move on. Don't have to talk about these goddamn clowns.
He doesn't even talk about them. And this is why Sean's outrage at James English actually clapping back, let's say, was all the more bemusing, because Attwood had been sniping at James English in totally out of order ways for the last few days, and then that Decca Heggie podcast where I'm sure James English's own lawyers will have had a look at that in relation to the things that were said, because again, there were some outrageous claims getting made, which I believe have been cut out. The live stream was about an hour longer than it now is on Decca Heggie's channel, so there's been a lot of cuts to it.
Is that surprising?
it's not surprising at all because they kept saying, "Oh, oops, don't say the name James English." Did you see that?
Yeah, and then they kept saying it anyways.
Yeah, it's just like, oh my God. So they clearly had a plan beforehand. Let's talk about James English, but don't say his name, you know? That ain't going to cut the fucking mustard, boys. But, you know, they did what they did. But Attwood being surprised that James had done a video back, and Attwood was literally shaking in his video, and he was absolutely furious that James had the gall to put it on his main channel. He was like shaking his head, tutting. He was like, he put it on his main channel, and you could just see him. He was so pissed off about that fact. It's like, yes, because that hasn't happened before, mate. And he knows the mainstream actually keeps an eye on James English's channel. There's been a couple of newspaper articles based on podcasts that James English has actually had.
I'm glad James put it on his main channel. Let that,
same here.
You know, because you and I have been covering this since day one. Essentially, the name of the show is the Daddygate Podcast. We thought about changing it a few times in the past, but I think it needs to stay there because this is what's gonna, when people search Daddygate, this is why I had been telling people, you know, when you want to spread the word, hashtag Daddygate, you know, all things connected to Daddygate. So when people search it, these are the things that people will find. There is no, I mean, for someone that's trying to hide it, sweep it under the rug, you know, stuff it in their closet or whatever, it's not going anywhere. And for someone like James English to use their platform and talk about Daddygate on the big stage, essentially, I thought it was badass. Like I said, his video has already got nearly 240,000 views in only 3 days. Big ups to him, man. You can feel how you wish about James one way. That's not, you're entitled to your opinion, but I am going to give credit where it needs to go. No one has done it. And to see someone of James's caliber to do that, I thought was a huge win.
Yeah, I thought it was excellent. Yeah, I thought it was absolutely excellent. A great day in Daddygate because it's just getting closer to the mainstream, and also allowed us to see what kind of excuses Sean Attwood's going to bring out in air. Now, could you imagine he was bringing out the kind of excuses that he's brought out to actual journalists that were questioning him about it? They would see through his facade in a matter of seconds. They won't believe his YouTube constructed responses, which are, this was a troll.
I think they would get if they are indeed doing their job correctly, I think a lot of the responses or reactions would be very similar to Matt or Falia. You know, he had no idea of Daddygate, and when Sean was giving his responses or answers to it, you could see in Matt's face, like, I'm not really buying this shit, you know?
Yeah, Matt was thinking about what Sean Attwood was saying rather than just believing it. He was thinking about it, and he was like, right, okay.
But then you'll on the flip side of that, you'll have other people that will know everything about Daddygate and will help Sean. You know, I'm going to call this guy out. I don't care. Steve Wraith knew everything about Daddygate. I messaged him. He had all the evidence. And then when it came to put Sean on his show, even before that, I go, Steve, what's going on here, dude? You know everything about Daddygate. He goes, oh, well, you know, people just make accusations. I go, I gave you freaking evidence. Oh, well, you know, it's just business. You're going to have people like that. And it's unfortunate and it's sad that at the end of the day, they don't care. It's their bottom line. It's, you know, I guess their livelihood, I guess, is the way they look at it and justify it in their minds.
Well, people are going to shill for Attwood because they see Attwood's sub count, but they don't look at the views. And you see some of these people shilling for Sean Attwood, and as we said before, they don't get the views. They must notice that they don't get the views that they were expecting. They must also see when they shout him out on Twitter, etc., or when Attwood puts things on Twitter, he gets 3 retweets. Now, this is a guy, you know, can you imagine Joe Rogan put something out on Twitter? Do you think he'd have 3 retweets? No, he would have tens of thousands of retweets, certainly several thousand. So there's a bit of a disparity because he doesn't have several thousand the amount of subs that Sean Attwood has. You know, there's a big disparity. A lot of Sean Attwood subs are dead, but people will see the sub count of Attwood, and they say that, oh, that's it, that I'll just get him on my show, and I'm going to allow him to flatter me, and I'm going to allow him to get his narrative out there, which is that anyone that saw Daddygate and remembers Daddygate happening and unfolding is a troll, and that they all have either misremembered or made it all up in their heads, made up all these sick sexual scenarios when there's videos leaking, photographs leaking of Attwood with his tongue in Cali's mouth, among several other things.
They sent me. But these Cali sexual scenarios are in our heads. They sent it to me, but it's in our heads.
That's a
good point. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then we've got the conversation with Cali and Brian Harvey, BH, where Cali was absolutely fuming with Sean at that point. She was very annoyed with Sean Attwood at that time because he totally ditched her. She went to speak to Brian Harvey. Brian Harvey recorded the conversation without her knowing that it was recorded for his own safety, and he was very open about that. He published it on his channel and said this is recorded for both of our own safety because he thought Cali was in trouble. And Cali said, Sean Attwood, I went to him for help, and he wasn't within 2 hours of the first podcast. Was it right that he slept with me within 2 hours of the first podcast? No, it wasn't. She's a trafficked woman. She was actively being trafficked at the time she was on your podcast, if we're to believe what Attwood himself has said. And yet people are fine to dismiss it as if it's fine.
Yeah, 100%, man. That brings me to the other point where Sean resurfaced the video of Cali, the Cali interview where she's in prison. A video that was very similar. It was exactly the same video, but this was the longer, unedited version. Yeah, the full version, if you will. I did a response video to it. So just to recap for those people that are brand new, and welcome all those new Daddygate subscribers, because I noticed we did get a little bit of a bump the last couple of weeks because of all this. So to all the new folks, feel free to listen back to the back catalog so it can make all sense. So you listen episode 1 through 10. So there was a video where Sean is interviewing Cali, and it's on my Odysee channel. You guys can still see it. It's my response video. I think I named it the Attwood Manipulation Files. Cali's sitting there on a couch. He's asking her questions, and it's clear as day that he is manipulating the conversation to how he wants it to be. And this is before she was due to disappear for a few months behind bars. Now, in the last few days, Sean, for whatever reason, decided to release the unedited full version of that video. And in that video, there are many theories, many speculations, and as to why Sean took it down almost immediately after he uploaded it himself. But in my theory is because if you listen to the longer unedited full version of that video, and the response video is on my channel, I think Gustaves actually has the whole thing on his channel. But if you listen to it, there are times Sean is asking Cali how Daddygate started and, the origins of it, if you will. And Cali is like, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
And to me, that was so freaking damning, man, because she didn't even know. So not only does his right-hand man, the cameraman, not know the origins or, have all the answers to Daddygate, but neither does Cali, apparently. And the comments, the dislikes were flying in. Even his own supporters like, Sean, you need to take it down. It's not a good look. And sure enough, Sean, after how long was it up? And then he took it down?
Like 2 hours? 1 hour.
1 hour?
1 hour. And it had over 200 dislikes. I think I can't remember now, but it had over 200. And I think it had well over 200.
Damn,
I think
should have screenshotted that.
It was closer to 500, but
I do have someone that said they recorded it, man. I did.
Interesting.
Someone messaged me. They screen recorded it. I don't know what they screen recorded, if it was just the audio or what, but I'll find out.
We need to see the comments. If anyone's got those comments, please let us know. Put it on your channel, link it down below, or get in touch with us, because we would love to see those comments. I saw the comments, and I had recorded them, but it didn't work, unfortunately. So I was like, oh my God, I lost the recording. Absolute nightmare. But the comments were absolutely scathing. And a lot of them were scathing because it was evidently disturbing. She looked like she was under the influence of an extremely strong drug. And she did not look well. She did not look healthy. It was not a good look. Her head was lopping back. Her eyes were rolling in her head at times. Her tongue was coming out sometimes, and it's really disturbing. You get
and
the impression
Sean's steering the entire
wrong.
Conversation, dude. He's steering it. We had been saying, this is the Sean Cali relationship is, put your feelings aside for 1 second on the whole Me Too movement, but it's a classic Me Too scenario. You got someone in power, someone that doesn't have any power, and being steered into the conversation to get the final outcome that Attwood wanted, and that's
take all the blame.
Yeah,
to take all the blame just before she goes into jail. And Attwood said on, I think it was Matt Orfalia's channel, he said, we recorded this just in case anything legal happened. Why would anything legal happen? It's just odd. The whole thing was disturbing and creepy. I like I say, I really got the impression that I was watching a video that was wrong. I almost felt like there's something illegal about this video. Like this isn't right at all, because she looked like she'd been drugged up. Also, did you notice something else in the interview that Attwood did the podcast that Attwood did on his own channel? He actually said, in his response to James English, to people's questions, he actually said that Cali was heavily addicted to drugs when she came to his house. I thought she was supposed to have been clean. I thought she was supposed to have got off the drugs and she was staying with him. He was outraged that people were claiming they were back on drugs. Remember that? He was absolutely outraged at that. But now he's saying she was addicted to drugs when she came to his house.
Well, there's been a deliberate attempt by Sean Attwood. That's a good catch. I didn't catch that, so that's a good catch, but it doesn't surprise me. There's been a deliberate attempt by Attwood in the last few weeks, maybe last couple of months, to rewrite history, change the narrative. That would be a perfect example of that. Another example is that the whole prank was for a prank on one troll. Now, if you've been paying attention to him the last couple of weeks, this was a prank on the trolls with an S. So the narrative, he's slowly trying to manipulate it and rewrite history, in other words. And we're catching it. We're anyone that's been following it closely, we all see it happening. Unfortunately, the people that are coming in brand new are probably going to miss these little nuances. And this is why it's important to talk about it and put it on the record.
Exactly. It's very, very difficult to come into a situation at the end of it or in the middle of it and catch up with everything. It's really, really, really difficult to do, which is why I try and make videos which put everything together. And I've still missed out on multiple pieces of information in my video, actually. There's several. Did you hear when he said, as somebody pointed out in my comments very astutely, when Attwood said he just blamed everything on a mixed race guy, a random mixed race guy. He said, oh, well, I can't tell you too much, but Cali had this guy come down to the house, mixed race guy. I mean,
what did that have to do with anything, man? What's the relevance to it?
It's like that scene in Goodfellas where the guy just lets the gangsters take his truck, and then he's like, it's an insurance job, so he gets on the phone to the police and he says, 2 black guys just stole my truck, it's to throw them off the scent, although he doesn't say it in those words. But I would just saying some mixed race guy. But then if you caught what he said after that, he said this mixed race, Cali had this mixed race guy. He came around to the house. He used my computer to entice paedophiles. I can't say much more about it. So you're letting a stranger come in and use your own personal computer to entice paedophiles knowingly.
The whole story doesn't make sense.
Yeah. That sounds like he's trying to get on top of something.
He's covering stuff up, man.
He's the one that mentioned that. I'm not, he mentioned it. You know what he's like with when people talk about things that he mentions, or people talk about the minor charges on his rap sheet, but they are there. I'm not trying to make anything sound worse than it is. I find it extremely odd that Sean Attwood brought that up out of nowhere and claimed that some mixed race guy that he didn't know came into his house, used his computer to entice paedophiles. I find that very odd. Why would that have happened, and why would it have been mentioned? And then he said, I can't say anything else about it. It seems disturbing. It's quite disturbing. No. There's a lot of weird shit going on, in my opinion, here.
And yeah, it's all mirrors the minor characters as well in that regard. It just seems like there's so many similarities. So Sean is the man up top, but it just trickles down where these lies, they spew them with such ease, and it almost seems like they have conviction in their lies, these, all the things that they say can be verifiably proven wrong, and they still run with it, even when called out on it. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'm glad you put out the title of gaslighting, because I had heard the term, but I honestly didn't know. I'm going to confess, I didn't know the exact definition of it. But now that I understand it a little bit better, it completely fits in with the whole thing. Saying things. Makes you question
yourself.
Yes.
You just lied. You said the opposite thing yesterday. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. You're crazy. You're a bully. It's like, what's going on here?
It's the whole, like that whole thing I was just telling you about. At first the whole narrative was a prank on a troll. Now it's a prank on the trolls. And in a few weeks, you ask them, like, oh, yeah, this was a prank on every one of these guys. It
was a prank on a troll initially, a person that he said was harassing abuse survivors for several months. It was a prank on a troll initially, and it's now morphed into the people that believed what he put out with the intention of having people believe it, because he said it was his intention to believe it. He wanted to make it realistic, and he put out this video with Cali because he wanted people to believe that he had done this stuff. And now suddenly all the people that believed his prank, that he claims it is, and are outraged by it, they are now the trolls. He's mixing it all together.
Yeah, and again, straight up gaslighting, man. And that's why, again, something like this show that we're doing right here, the content you put on your channel, the content I put on my channel, it's like a record of it. So no matter how hard he tries to change the narrative, rewrite history, spew different propaganda, the truth is there, and he can't run away from it. And that's probably why, the whole deplatforming processes were started.
Yep. That's it. They want us off.
Yeah, suppress the truth, hide it. I don't know. That's why I did a small little video. I'm not a video engineer like you are, but I think I put it on the Daddygate podcast. Just a 2-minute quick little fun video, shill Attwood. But I just wanted to highlight some of the gaslighting techniques, like show me the proof, show me the evidence. He's been saying that over and over the last couple of weeks. There. And so what did I do? I inserted the CCTV footage. I put the fake employment letter, some of the most damning bits and pieces. Exactly. I go, here is the proof, dude. It's here's a gang boss in prison. Get the fuck out of here.
By repeating the phrase, show me the evidence, just show me the evidence, that's just a manipulation technique. It's more gaslighting. And when you just say, show me the evidence, where's your proof? When you know that people have shown evidence and have shown proof, all it does is tell his new subscribers that, look, these people don't have any evidence, they don't have any proof, they're just trolling him, they're just trolls. Like, that would attract a hell of a lot of trolls. Let's just say that much. Yeah. I wonder when he's going to start saying Sonia Poulton was trolling him as well, because the interview with Sonia Poulton was actually, looking back on it, one of the most damning records of what went on with Attwood. And I think
we were initially, let's touch on it real quick. I'm glad we're bringing it up, because initially I think a lot of people were like, Sonia Poulton, and you can feel how you want. I'm just talking about this particular instance.
Yeah.
Where people are like, oh, she sold out, she should have been hammering them. Now in hindsight, it is a damning piece of interview. I'm not saying I'm sticking up for her one way or I'm shitting on her. I'm not telling you how you should feel about Miss Polton. I'm just saying, looking at it objectively, that was a damning piece. And
yes.
the other clip that you put in on your video yesterday, where Muhammad Butt and Polton talking about it, I forgot about that, man. So when you put it up there, it was awesome to see that and listen to it again months later, where my preconceived judgments, from that time, things have changed. And to listen to it again, I'm like, God damn, there's some serious shit going on here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. The reality of the situation is what Sean Attwood did was objectively wrong to pretty much anyone, regardless of whether you like them or not. Most people can see that what Sean Attwood did was not acceptable. It's not a good look. It's not good for business. That's for sure. And it's absolutely morally wrong what he did, certainly in my opinion anyway. And I believe that to be just generally correct over the sort of mass of people that actually hear about it and see it and for what it actually is with the evidence. Without Sean Attwood's story of just claiming it's trolls, most people will come to the conclusion that it's not acceptable that an anti-paedophilia campaigner filmed an abuse victim who has autism kneeling down and calling him daddy and preparing to give him head. That is not acceptable. There's no other way about it.
Yeah, and there's people that say, oh, it wasn't a big deal. We have pointed out the stuff afterwards that just made this what could have easily been not a big deal, like he has been trying to state by simply owning up to it and moving on. But instead, all these subsequent games from scamming people, hardworking people, to donating to a GoFundMe, where the people were donating money and had no idea that this money was going to an active adult worker who was charging £1,200 per tapping sesh, and the subsequent stuff, from deplatforming to illegal copyright strikes to all this other BS. And if you call yourself a truther, this whole thing has put in a black eye to someone that proclaims to be talking about the truth and exposing this and exposing that, and instead the whole entire credibility of this character is put to question. In my eyes, has zero credibility, and I think in the eyes of the people that have been following our work and following along, not only our work, but they have done their own work on their own due diligence. A lot of the people that follow us are very intelligent, man, and maybe they don't make their own YouTube channels, and they don't have time for that, but they've been following closely. I get these messages from people and like, hey, did you think about this? And they give us insightful stuff. So it's been a group and team effort. It's not just you and I talking and True Media talking. It's been a collective, and I think for everyone that's been following it intently as we all have, there is zero credibility with this character at this point in time.
Absolutely. We just want our audience, unlike Attwood's active audience, a lot of them, to be able to just think for themselves and take a look at things for themselves. We're not trying to convince anyone. I had a comment on my channel the other day saying, you've convinced me, man. I've unsubbed to Sean Attwood, and it's like, well, that's not my goal at all. I don't want to convince. What I want you to do is look at the evidence and make your own mind up. And if there are any holes in the evidence that I have provided, please show it. I'm putting it out in public. If there's any holes there, they are there to be exposed. So please do. But, I don't want to convince anyone. It's not about persuading anyone about our way of thinking. We make no secrets about our opinions of Sean Attwood ourselves, but I don't care if anyone else shares the same opinion or not. It's literally just look at the evidence and see for yourself. And then I fail to see how you could have any other opinion of the man, to be perfectly honest, unless you're prepared to overlook some crazy shit.
And if you still decide to be on that side, on the Sean Attwood side, and be like, no, it's no big deal, I want to talk to you. And I have spoken with people like that, with Miss Joyce. Unfortunately, that podcast didn't save, but this person, and I take that back. This person did not see all the evidence because I had brought up some pieces, the
she
landlady.
refused to look at it.
Yeah, she refused to look at it. Same thing with Mr. Nipple Clamps. Same damn thing. I brought up the same questions. Oh, I don't know much about it. So the people that do defend, that's the common pattern. They don't want to look at the evidence. They don't want to have their viewpoints challenged. You know what I'm saying? It's
100%. Yes, it's very infuriating. We need a logical person who wants to come and speak to yourself or speak on here and discuss their reasons of why they like why they still support Sean Attwood, why Daddygate's not a big deal. I've seen a couple of comments on James English's video saying, "Oh, come on, James, it's just a guy dressing up his missus as a schoolgirl." You can think what you like of that, but actually it was not a schoolgirl. It was someone that hadn't, that outfit was a preschool child's outfit. No matter how you think of the schoolgirl thing, but that's not even a valid argument. Second of all, she's not supposed to be his missus. He was fundraising for her because she was a vulnerable, trafficked woman.
That's been one of the things that I think hasn't really been brought up enough, I think, and where that it needs to be highlighted more. This was a podcast guest, and somewhere along the lines or along the process, it went from Cali being a podcast guest to somehow his lover sending those thumbnails where they're clearly romantically involved and whatnot. And I don't think no one ever really touched much on it. Have you noticed that? Or is that just...
Yeah, it's as if, I think because everyone sort of knew anyway, you know what I mean? But it's actually, if that's his partner and he hasn't told people that that's his partner when he's fundraising for her, that is bordering on fraud. And Attwood himself has admitted fraud. He actually said on his live stream that he put out after James English did his video, he actually said, people have accused me of fundraising for podcast studio equipment as if I'm so desperate that I would commit fraud, So he admits that using a GoFundMe for something that was not explained to the audience is fraud. So if Cali actually turns out to have been his partner, that is fraud. And a lot of people, like you say, aren't really that interested in that fact.
Yeah, it's that relation, that dynamic has never been explained. I also wanted to touch back. Remember during the watermelon challenge, which some people that are new don't really understand why watermelon emojis are appropriate in the Daddygate. It's very appropriate. On one of my early live streams, it was actually on my live stream with Jimmy James Harris. Rest in peace, Jimmy James. He was my first podcast guest. And yesterday we both found out that he had passed away. So rest in peace to Jimmy James Harris.
Yeah, that was sad news, that. And like you say, he was one of the first. In fact, he was the first former Attwood guest to go on the record. So like you say, man, just rest in peace. Yesterday was the first we heard. So yeah, it's a shame. He was definitely a nice guy.
Yeah, my condolences. And I don't want to... I was just remembering the Watermelon Challenge, and he was actually the guest during the Watermelon Challenge episode. But in the Watermelon Challenge, I had asked Sean to show us that, his flat wasn't too high up, because he was claiming that's where Cali was going to attempt suicide and whatnot. And he ended up taking up my challenge. We called it the Watermelon Challenge. I asked him to put it on his channel. He put it on Cali's channel. And then when Cali recorded the challenge, and I asked him to do the challenge, he had Cali do the challenge. And Cali drove up in her car and just walks into his flat. So that I remember seeing, I'm like, wait a minute. This isn't just a relationship between someone helping out a podcast guest. This is more to it, where she can just walk in, drive up to his house anytime she wants, unannounced. And that was one of the first times I started to wait a minute, there's something more going on here.
Yeah, and if it did turn sexual between them, it never, ever should have turned sexual between them, because I know they're both adults, but Attwood has got a duty of care over his podcast guests, and it is for him to say no to the traumatized women that have been abused all their lives. He even says, oh, it was all Cali's idea to do the Daddygate video. It's for him to say no to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She's traumatized and she's been abused, and quite possibly having been raped so many times and abused so many times throughout her life, all she probably knows is sex, which is an unfortunate fact for traumatized and abused women. And it is for him as the podcaster to say no to the person that he's supposed to be helping for filming that, no to filming that prank, and no to things going further. It's absolutely bang out of line. It shows severe moral failings if it did turn sexual. And of course, Sean Attwood will never admit it, but tongue in the mouth, telling me that I'm jealous of his sex life, all these
nude
things.
Photos all over his flat.
Photos and actually videos of Cali masturbating, because some of those photos were actually thumbnails of videos where Cali was actually masturbating. So yeah, it's,
and then what comes up on the search engine? You put in Cali Diamond.
Well, I'm not going to say.
You guys try it
with themselves. If you type Cali, this is how badly Sean Attwood has damaged Cali Diamond's reputation. If you type Cali Diamond into YouTube search engine, put down below in the comments what the first thing that comes up is, and see if you get the same thing as I have, because I've certainly never searched for that term in my life. I can assure you of that. I don't use that kind of terminology, to be honest, and I find it very odd that that's the first thing that comes up.
Yeah, that's the first. So everyone, that's a thought experiment. That's everyone's homework, Daddygate homework for today.
Yes.
Go to Google Cali. Is it Google or YouTube?
It's YouTube. It's YouTube's on search. It was on
just
mobile.
Just put in Cali Diamond and see what the next word comes up. You guys can thank us later. But we're
let us
rolling
know down below.
Yeah, we're rolling up on an hour, my man. It was another great show. As always, we appreciate you guys for tuning in week in and
we do
every few weeks out.
Excellent.
100%. Where can people find you, my man?
I am, of course, on YouTube, Chancer, Twitter, Chancer Media, and also I'm on Odysee, Chancer as well. So you can get me at any of those places.
That is exquisite. You can find me on Odysee. If you are new to this whole thing, I was once legendary for the live stream realm. I'm still doing them, and they're still tons of fun. So please join us there on Odysee. My link to my channel will be in the description, so I would love to see you there, and you guys can join the fun. I also have a private Facebook group, so if you guys are on Facebook, the private Facebook group is a lot of fun. We do a lot of memes. It's pretty much like 85-90% Daddygate talk, so you can get caught up in there. We have a great community there, so I will put a link. Do not search for it on your own, because there is an imposter group out there. If you run into a group with only a handful of members, that is not the real one. Our group is bordering on 200 now. Would love to have you there, but make sure that you join. And if you have a super private account, that it doesn't matter. I may ask you to voice verify, we like to know who's in there, and we have a pretty good handle on the situation. But it's a lot of fun, so be sure to join us there on the private Facebook group. And any other announcements? I think that's everything, man. Just nice to have everybody tuning in. Put your comments and thoughts down below, of course, and subscribe if you're not already subscribed, because as I said at the start, this channel isn't supposed to exist. Apparently it's been deleted, if you believe the rumors. And then the other thing I would just like to say is, once again, obviously sad news about Jimmy James Harris from the EOTT podcast. Again, that was just yesterday that we found out, so rest in peace to him, of course, and condolences to his friends and family. Yeah, definitely have my thoughts. Just found out about that yesterday, and completely relevant to everything we've been covering.
He was a huge guest at the start, because he was just the first former podcast guest of Sean Attwood's that had the balls to come out and talk about his experiences. He wasn't rude about him or anything like that. He just came on and chatted about his experiences, and it was a It was a good podcast.
God, I've been reminiscing about that, pretty much all morning today. That's when I was starting the live stream. Like I mentioned, he was my first guest, and that's when my screen had a piece of tape on the webcam. I had to call him on Facebook Messenger, put him on speakerphone, and then stick the speaker end to my headset, and it was as ghetto as you can be. But much love to him. He helped me, I only had a few hundred subscribers at the time, so when he agreed to be my first guest, I was super ecstatic. So much love to my man. He was a huge part at the very beginning for Daddygate, so gotta give the man much love, and definitely condolences to friends and family. I apparently it was a few weeks ago, but we just found out yesterday apparently, so much love to the man. Life is a precious thing, beautiful thing, so enjoy it, everyone. Much love to each and every one of you guys, and much love to you, Mr. Kitty Cat.
Thank you, and the same to you, my friend.
All right, y'all. Until next time, we will catch you on the flip side. Make sure you guys hit the video description for all the links. All right, y'all.
See you later, guys.
Peace.